Good afternoon. How are you? I think it's great to be with you, at least virtually. As Mary has asked me to talk about the diaconate, particularly about my calling to diaconate and how that came about. And before I do that, I sort of want to explain why I'm in this. Okay, this is an alb, and like priests, deacons wear an alb. And like priests, deacons have this, what we call a cincture, which we tie around our waist to hold our garment in place. Like priests, we also have a stole. Okay, but our stole is worn a little differently. All right, and I'm going to stand for a second. Mm-hmm. Our stole goes to the side. Okay, like this. And a priest stole, to the extent you've paid attention, it comes down like this. All right, and there's a marvelous visual that sort of depicts this. When Pope Francis would wash the feet of those who were selected on Holy Thursday, he would have on his priest stole, and of course it would be on just like this, and he'd have on an alb, just like mine. And as he came up to wash them, you would see him, and what he would do would be move this stole over like this and tie it together. Now, in some sense, he's representing the diaconate by doing that very thing, because the diaconate, as you probably know, is all about service, and there's no question that what the Pope was doing there was serving the people of God. So we wear our stole to the side. So if you see us all up there in stoles, this is how you'll recognize the deacon. Now sometimes I wear what is called a dalmatic. The priest wears a chasuble, all right? And the dalmatic is a lot like a chasuble, except I also have an understole, which also goes to the side, just like this, all right? And I put over that the dalmatic. I'm going to mess up my hair. Put over that the dalmatic, and the one thing you'll notice, at least I'm going to ask you a quiz question. What's the difference between a chasuble and a dalmatic? All right, give you a second to think about that. Shout out your answers. I know I'll hear you. Well, the big difference is this. I have sleeves. Okay? If you notice, the priest alb is just sort of cut open. There are no sleeves. And again, this in some sense represents the notion of service. You know how you roll up your sleeves to do a task? Well, in essence, my sleeves are already there to the side so they don't get in the way. Anyway, let me take these off. That's a quick lesson. Okay, so what's a deacon? Well, I don't know. Deacon? Well, maybe they're laity who pray a lot. Well, that's not quite right. Deacons are ordained clergy. I'm going to sit down and take this off. We're ordained, just like priests are. We're ordained to the sacrament of holy orders. And in fact, a useless fact to know is that all priests first become deacons before they become priests. So they are first ordained to diaconate. Their diaconate is called transitional. So it's a transitional diaconate for obviously the very reasons they're moving on to the next order of holy orders to priesthood. And they'll usually stay as a transitional deacon for about a year. I'm what is called a permanent deacon, all right? Which means I ain't moving on. Okay, I'm set and I'm staying as a deacon in service to the church. Again, we're clergy. And we do some of the things that the priests do. Okay, we preach if the pastor says fine. And Father Bob is very nice to give me opportunities to preach. We baptize. We can preside at funerals. We can be the officiant at weddings. There are a whole slew of things that we do that priests do as well, but there is a huge, important, and significant difference. And you see it at every Mass when the priest says the words of consecration and holds up the body and the blood. Deacons can't do that. We do not have the faculties, the authority to change bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. And one way to sort of notice what happens when Mass is being said, and you may see it when we have a number of priests and I'm the deacon, is the priests will often join in the Mass parts that the celebrant, the lead priest, is saying at the Mass. They'll say the same words, and they'll hold up their hands. The deacon is going to stay back because we're not saying those words. We're not part of that process. That is not our role. And of course, as you know, the church is all about roles that each of us have been given. So my role is to, it's an awful thing to say because it's so difficult to live up to. My role is to be deacon in the streets, to be reaching out to others and offering them help. And I do that in a variety of ways, visiting the sick, of course, reaching out to parishioners who are in distress or anxious. I do a Bible study every Thursday night that some of you know about. So there's lots of things that I do to reach out to others and to help. Most biggest difference between priests and deacons is that almost all deacons are married. Okay? Joyce and I have been married, it'll be 50 years in July. So, and virtually very few priests are married, and those priests that are married are usually those who have come into the church. They were Episcopal priests before, or Anglican priests before, and they've come into the church married. So deacons can be married. If we're not married at the time of ordination, we must stay single and celibate. All right, enough of that. So why am I a deacon? Okay, a great question, and it's one I sort of wonder and think about a lot too. Now, like so many of you, in college and when I went to law school, I was in a lot of offices and did a lot of things and served on a lot of committees and reached out and offered to help people do various things. And I did that throughout those years of education. When Joyce and I started to move into the communities we lived in, I always was involved in the community organization. So I might have held an office, I would have had some responsibilities. Again, I was reaching out and serving others. But to be honest, nothing about my service really had any real thing to do with my faith. I was doing, quote, good things to do good things. I wasn't necessarily doing good things because by doing those good things, they and I might get closer to God. And so when Joyce and I came to Nativity, back in the very beginning days, that began to change. I started to get involved in activities in the church in which I would be reaching out. And in fact, in 1987, Ken Smith, who very few, I assume, will still remember, he asked me, would I like to be a Knights of Columbus? And so I joined the Knights and continued to do more, and what was beautiful about that, I was then starting to actually do this service, all these things that I have done, I was doing them for God. And I was learning, and it's a beautiful gift of grace when we can learn it, to see in those that we would reach out to the face of God. To have a sense that we are doing those things because God asks us to, commands us to, commissions us to, compels us to love our neighbor. Okay, so I moved from the secular service to helping people in the church. And it wasn't until Joyce and I were at St. Augustine Parish in D.C., where the good Monsignor there came up to me one day. We were at some activity, some event, doing all kinds of stuff. And he said to me, had you ever considered that God might be calling you to the diaconate? Wow. And I had to admit to him, well, I'm not sure I really thought about it. And so I did begin to think about it and wonder about it, and wondering if this was a way that I could take this service to another level. And ultimately that led to me applying for the diaconate in 1997. Yes, it's quite a while ago. Applying to the diaconate in 1997, I got accepted. Went through a year of what they call aspirancy. It's a great church word where we're sort of trying to judge whether we really have this calling. And then 4 years of formation, going to classes twice a week at the Pastoral Center in the Archdiocese of Washington. Following that period of basically 5 years, I was ordained. I received the sacrament of holy orders and ordained as a permanent deacon on June 8th, 2002. So it's going to be 18 years. So I think the most significant thing for me in trying to understand this journey is that I'm still on it. And I honestly, if someone asked me, well, what is God calling you to do? And they said, be specific, I'd have difficulties trying to figure that out. I think I'm trying to still find that out. So for whatever many years I'm blessed to be able to serve the people of Nativity in this role as deacon, I hope you help me answer that question. Help me understand what it truly means to be a servant of God, to be a deacon in the church. Thank you very much.